super excited. Hello, everyone. So my name's Hat, or I'm Kanal Huang to be official. Thank you for choosing to be here to join us today for this kickoff for the first ever, actually, I would suppose, interactive series of GSIDD, or the Global Society for Infectious Disease Dynamics. So just a recap from the launch. The mission of GSIDD is to promote collaborations, drive innovations, advance the education of IDD as a field, and also to advocate for everyone us, for our field to grow, right? And so having launched, what does that mean? It means that now we're in this building phase where we as a community, every one of us, will be solidifying the bylaws to move towards electing the leadership for our community. This is a participatory process which will happen very soon. So please do tune in to the mailing list and the website via the link in the chat. Right? In parallel, we also want to connect together existing IDD bodies that are dispersed throughout this globe through this IDD Connect series. And so that we can explore the strengths that are already there and explore how we can actually build a society which would serve as this connective tissue to help us be stronger together. So today I'm extremely excited that peers from 4 organizations, not one, across the Oceania, will help kick us off strong on this exciting journey. So let's go. Over to you, Freya.
Thanks, Hat. And I'll just share my screen. That is the wrong slide deck. Here we go. Okay, so my name's Freya Shearer, and I'm the director of a consortium that's across Australia and New Zealand called a CFAB. I'll get to that more in a minute, and we're hosting this first series. So today's session is in 3 parts. Part 1, we've got 10 questions for you. I hope you have your phone handy. If you don't have your phone handy, it might be good to grab that now so that you can take part in that session. Part 2, we're going to have some presentations from a small sample of IDD research and initiatives from across Oceania. Myself and with me today, happens to be in Melbourne, is Alexandra Hogan from the University of New South Wales, Sydney. You can see where she's geolocated there on the map that I provided. And Mike Plank from the University of Canterbury, New Zealand, and Melissa Penny from the University of Western Australia and the Kids Research Institute. We will try to spend some time, have some Q&A after the presentations, but if that will be time permitting, but the chat function is on, I believe. So if you do have questions while people are talking, feel free to put it in the chat. And I'm sure there'll be other representatives from the teams and organizations and initiatives that are talking, and they can probably jump in and answer your questions, or you can have a bit of a side conversation happening there. So that's fine. And then we'll come back, and I've got 2 final wrap-up questions. Okay, part 1. So I'm just going to put the instructions up for you. So if you have your phone handy and you can scan that QR code, I'll give everyone a couple of moments to do that. Can any of the panelists let me know if you've managed to do that so that, yep, great. All right, so this is the, they've got the question there. So we've got Melbourne, great start. Looks like there's a lot of representatives from Melbourne because it's growing. Excellent. I'm going to move us on. Okay, so I might be particularly ignorant, but I wasn't actually sure what Oceania represented when we were asked to do this. And so I had to Google it. And so this next question is, which list of countries includes only countries within Oceania? And I'm not going to show you the result. I'm going to give you 15 seconds and then I'll so you can't be influenced by other people's responses. Antarctica is not a country, I appreciate. 5 more seconds. Lock in your answer. Okay. This is your responses. And 65% of people were correct. So that's good to know. The country, so Antarctica is not in Oceania. Neither is the Philippines, and neither is East Timor. And I put East Timor in there twice to try and confuse some people. We should be able to step forward. There we go. So there's that's the United Nations list of countries and territories geoscheme. And so yeah, that's lots and lots of Pacific island nations, Australia, New Zealand, and Papua New Guinea. And so I wanted to take the opportunity to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands on which we're meeting today, me and Alexander and many others that I know from Melbourne. So I want to acknowledge the Wurundjeri Woi, Wurrung and Bunurong peoples and pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging, and extend that respect to any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people on the call today. And I also wanted to invite other people, if they wish to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands on which they're sitting or joining us from today. So if you would like to do that now. Oh no, it's a word cloud. So if it's for Wurundjeri Wurrung, it's not going to come up. Thanks. I was about to criticize some people for their spelling, but
criticize autocorrect.
I don't know where wiring is, but great. Thanks all. Oh, we've got more coming through. Lots of Wurundjeri. That's Melbourne, for those that don't know. So
Bidjigal is Sydney.
So there we go. Yeah.
A few Sydney people.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So next question. Of those who have joined us today, are you currently studying or working in IDD in Oceania? Okay, so as expected, the probably largely due to time zones, most people are in Oceania, and some people still are not sure. Okay, so the next, I think I've got 3 or 4 questions which are for those people currently study working in Oceania, but if you are outside of Oceania, don't worry, there is a question for you in the lineup. So for those currently studying, in which country did you first study or work in IDD? So where did you become interested in IDD, or where did you learn the skills that you're now applying in Australia? Australia is Australia for those who haven't encountered that slang. And for those, again, currently working studying in Oceania, which non-Oceania region do you have research collaborators or research partners? I think that looks like what maybe I would have expected. And yeah, sadly, some people have no collaborators, but maybe this society can help you to find some new connections. So that's good. And yeah, Europe, I think being on top is not surprising for this region. Okay. And then also, what types of activities do you work on with people that you collaborate in outside of Oceania? And this can be current or past. Okay, that's interesting. And hold that picture in your mind because I had a hypothesis, but it needs two more questions before I can say what that was. Okay, so still for the people studying working in Oceania, in which countries do you have research? In which Oceania countries do you have research collaborators, partners? And actually, and if you don't collaborate with, yeah, okay, there we go. I was going to say you can include obviously Australia and New Zealand can be where you're based. I see that some people possibly missed the geography lesson at the start, but that's okay. Okay, interesting. And what types of activities do you work with your Oceania collaborators? Yeah, and that's, I think I expected the data collection, interpretation, EPI, defining policy needs to jump up a little bit with this because I think as we've talked a lot about building modeling capacity in the region. And so I think a lot of our partnerships, I suspected a lot of our partnerships with our Oceania collaborators that might be outside of, say, Australia or New Zealand might be more around the less of the developing or playing modeling methods. And so that's something that lots of organizations have been in the region have been looking to improve capacity in that area. So that's not surprising. Okay, and this is for those not studying or working in Oceania. Where are your Oceania collaborators based, if you have any? Wow.
I think you captured an Oceania audience here.
Zoo lands, okay. Excellent. So potentially we can improve some connections there. Okay, this is the last question before we move on to part 2. And I'll give you maybe a full 30 seconds to think about it. But what do you think are the most pressing IDD problems in Oceania? Oh, some of them are falling off the screen, but yeah, interesting. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Interesting
Yeah.
responses. Yeah.
And those responses will be recorded. They're all anonymous, but they are recorded. So if the organisers if we want to dig into them later, we can. Okay, so on to part 2. And I'm first, so I'll just escape from here and move over to here. Okay, so as I said, I'm representing a CFA today, but for the purpose of this presentation, I'm also representing the Infectious Disease Dynamics Unit, which is a research unit across Melbourne School of Population and Global Health and the School of Maths and Stats. And you're going to give me an 8-minute warning.
Right.
Oh, great, because I will likely need it. Yeah. So this is a terrible picture of our research team. It's not all of them, but yeah, it was a fun day at Melbourne Zoo, and that's everybody in the team, missing some honorary members, but those are people with either students or staff employed in the unit currently. And we work on lots of different things. So these are our key research themes: spatial ecology and epi of zoonotic malaria in Southeast Asia. We also work on surveillance response to arboviruses in Australia, model-based surveillance study and system design, evolutionary and immunoepidemiological dynamics, that's concluding some within host dynamic modelling, and epidemic data analytics and forecasting, as well as pandemic preparedness. And today I'm going to talk about some of the initiatives under ACIFA, which kind of is really these 3 squares in the top right. So ACIFA is the Australia Aotearoa Consortium for Epidemic Forecasting and Analytics. And we are a consortium of research groups from across Australia and New Zealand. We aim to support response to epidemic diseases using real-time data analytics, modelling and forecasting. We have a number of, these are primary activities. Those activities at the top are our research and translation initiatives, but then we also have some other activities that we do, which are a bit more about engaging or thinking about the ways that we work, which is our community of practice. And we also have a seminar series as well. Today I'm going to talk a little bit about these 2 things, which will be familiar to formats that run in other parts of, in lots of other places have the forecasting and scenario modelling hubs, but I'll try and talk about things I think might be a bit different or distinct in how we're working compared to other hubs. And I'll also touch on those 3, a couple of things down in this bottom row as well. So our winter situational assessment program is we generate epidemic analyses of high burden respiratory viruses to support public health situational awareness and response. And we have a forecasting hub. So one of the key analyses that we run is these weekly forecasts, but we also that's nested within our winter situational assessment program, because we also provide other types of analyses with our forecast outputs. So we have estimates of past and current trends, particularly growth rates. And I'll get to that a little bit more in a second. And we focus on 3 pathogens. So we have COVID, influenza and RSV. We produce state-level estimates for Australia and a country-level estimate for New Zealand. And the schematic is just to remind you of when winter is in the Southern Hemisphere. And so we're running our analyses from April to September, whereas a lot of the other hubs that we're aware of would be running them from, say, I don't know, November through to March or something. So we're kind of offset in that sense. So as I said, it's a weekly process, and we have a number of data custodians who provide us with those data, and then there's a lot happening over about a 48-hour period to get those data to our final output, which is a report. Currently, due to data, Trans-Tasman data sovereignty challenges, we have a separate report for Australia and New Zealand, but we are working towards trying to have a combined one. And we also have, we produce the written report. We also have some verbal reporting as well. So we have a chat about the outcomes on a Friday afternoon for just 15 minutes quickly with any public health officials that want to join from some of the participating jurisdictions, and that's always very helpful and interesting for us as well. And I also just wanted to mention that we have what we call a hub infrastructure team, and they also support our scenario modelling hub as well. But and that's really, they're doing a lot of work from data transfer through to preparing the reports that I think is something that's really, really important for us to be able to do these analyses and to support public health response, but might be under appreciated in terms of in traditional academic terms, in the sense that they're processing data and cleaning data, it's noticing anomalies and fixing things and figuring out when to truncate if there's delays, etc. And then synthesizing, making sure people submit outputs in the right format. You'll be familiar with lots of these tasks, and they're time consuming and repetitive. And I think there's been quite a bit of discussion about how perhaps some of those sorts of things that we do that are important could be better recognised. Like many hubs, we also try to make our forecasting competitive. It's not just because it's fun, and we also had cash prizes for these awards, but also I think it helps. It's been shown it does improve advance the methods when there's a bit of a target. So we awarded presented awards for overall Australian targets and New Zealand targets, and we also focused on some aspects of the forecasting which might be more tricky, like predicting around peaks, or long shot was the award for the 4-week horizon, best performance over a 4-week horizon. And the other thing I wanted to quickly mention was inferring using our subtyping data, which has been really important for influenza. So these are not forecasts, this is just estimating trends up to the current date. And our policymakers have found these really useful because we otherwise just receive a total number of cases of influenza, and Olive Reels has done some nice work to be able to infer the individual dynamics of those, and we provide the growth rates. And if you work on flu, you might be familiar with the large, it was a large and late H3N2 epidemic that came through at the end of last year for us, and that meant a very early and large H3N2 epidemic in the Northern Hemisphere. And with these analyses, we were able to see way back here that there was something interesting going on, which was very much obscured when you looked at the total case counts. So scenario modelling hub, how long have I got left?
7.
Yeah, I knew this happened. I'm actually going to skip over this because I think Alexandra has a little bit, we're co-chairing that, so she'll I just want to go to here because I think these are some other initiatives that we're working on. So within our community of practice, Sarah Swindecker is leading a project looking at code review, not just carrying out the code review, but trying to understand people's perspectives before and after they participated, to try and understand what might be barriers to not doing this more as a routine practice. Like we always review methods for papers, but we don't tend to have frameworks for saying it's necessary to always review code. And then Ollie Eels has been, we actually ran this last year during our forecasting season. So having a process for doing rapid peer review of analyses that we're reporting to policymakers, and therefore we want to be confident that that they've been through a peer review process, and it's not always possible, particularly if we think back to COVID when things were being turned around in very short timeframes, being able to review them before they went to policymakers. And so we've had we've worked on a process to do that quickly during season for forecasting models that we want to include in the ensemble, but they're not in the published literature yet because someone developed it over the past 2 weeks or something. And we also developed an epidemic analytics and modelling short course that is targeting government entities and data analysts, because our government has expressed a lot of interest in upskilling their internal staff in these areas. And so we ran a pilot course last year, which was very good. And yeah, we're going to continue building on that and hopefully reaching some more people. Future, I can skip to, and I just wanted to thank lots of people. And if there's people online that aren't working with us or aren't involved and would like to be, there's a few different ways we can be involved. We'll have probably a scenario hub exercise we'll call for EOIs later this year. That'll be the second exercise that we've ran. We have summer, autumn and spring, summer seminar series as well. If you would like to join the seminar list, let us know. Unfortunately, you can't participate in the forecasting and scenario modelling exercise unless you are based in Australia or New Zealand because of the data sharing challenges. But if there's some way you want to talk to us about those activities, feel free to get in touch as well. And we'll have some workshops as well, which I didn't get time to talk about, but we can promote them through usual channels. And I'm handing over to Alexandra.
Right. Okay. Okay, excuse me, okay, there we go. Is that? Yes, great. Okay, thanks very much for the invitation to present today. So I'm Alexandra Hogan from UNSW Sydney. So I thought I would give a bit of an overview about who we are, where we're based, and the sort of things that we work on. So our group is in the School of Population Health. We're based on the edge of the UNSW Sydney campus, which is in the eastern part of Sydney. And we're in this new and fancy building, which is why I included a picture of it, called the Health Translation Hub over on the edge of campus. Our group is the Infectious Disease Dynamics and Interventions group. So we are sort of basically mathematicians and statisticians, or from a very quantitative background, but have moved into modelling disease dynamics with a very much a public health focus. And I'll talk a bit about projects in a minute. So I co-lead the group with Professor James Wood, who some of you would know, and we have 2 postdocs, a couple of PhD students, and also a research officer. And we will be advertising a new postdoc position soon as well, and that will make sure that goes up on IDD jobs. So a bit about the sorts of things that we work on. So I thought I'd just give an overview, kind of to give you a flavour of the types of projects and areas. So we're very much focused on modelling disease transmission at the population level using math and computational approaches. So a lot of SIR type models. And using these models, we are not so much focused on forecasting, but more on scenario modelling. So the medium and longer term horizons, and using these scenarios to answer public health questions over those longer time horizons. We also do some epidemiological data analysis, and that's really around trying to improve how we use data in our models to improve our projections. We're very much focused on vaccination as a key intervention, both for novel vaccines and novel vaccine technologies, such as, say, combination vaccines, and new strategies. So whether that's using those new products or using existing products in different populations. Mostly at the moment, our projects are really focused on respiratory pathogens. I think it's a really interesting space at the moment. We look at influenza, a lot of work on RSV and also COVID-19. And in terms of the sort of more science aspect, we're particularly interested in some of our projects at the moment in thinking about multi-scale models. So models that link within host immune responses, so what's happening to someone's immune response when they're infected or when they're vaccinated, and integrating that within population level dynamic models. In terms of how we're funded, we have some investigator and partnership grants from our National Health and Medical Research Council. We also have very strong links with the ACEFA CRE that Freya has just talked about, particularly around the scenario modelling hub, which I'll come back to, and also involved in the epi analytics course. But I think underlying all of this, and something that I wanted to emphasise, because of where we're based in a school of population health, our modelling is really focused on thinking about how we design our projects to inform public health decision making. So we are very motivated by doing good science, but then how we effectively translate these outputs to help inform policy decisions. So that's sort of our key motivation, and that's really driven by where our group sits within our university. So some of the groups who we work with, just to give you a sense of where our links are. So we're co-located at UNSW with the Kirby Institute. So their building's next door. That's a really large biomedical health and research institute. We have lots of links there with the CIFA, as we mentioned. So even, I guess, before a CIFA being established, I think all of the groups in Australia and New Zealand have always been very well connected, I think, in a really positive way. And that's a really nice part of being in this infectious disease modelling landscape, is that there's a very friendly, collaborative rapport between all these different groups. In particular, we work a lot with ANU and, say, Telethon or the Kids Research Institute over in WA. We have lots of policy links. And I also just wanted to mention that I've always been quite a strong part of the Australian New Zealand Industrial and Applied Mathematics Group, or ANZIAM, which is something that you might just hear come up, because up until the current time, our sort of ID modelling space has really been situated within the Applied Industrial and Applied Maths Society more broadly in this region. That's been our home to date. So I want to mention how some of our connections with public health policy, since I've emphasised that. So I've been involved in the WHO Immunisation Implementation Committee, or IVARAC. James, who I mentioned is co-leads our group, is on the Australian Technical Advisory Group on Immunisation, and also leads a partnership grant with different state and territory jurisdictions. So we do have these very strong policy links that inform our work. As Freya mentioned, we've been closely involved with the ACIFA Scenario Modelling Hub, so I co-lead that with Freya. And over the last 12 months, we've been working on modelling the impact of live attenuated influenza vaccines in children in Australia and New Zealand. There we go. Yes, so I thought I'll mention what that process actually looked like. So basically, over about 12 months, we conducted this exercise. It's still ongoing at the moment, but back in early last year, we conducted a policy stakeholder what do we call it? Like a
scenario design consultation.
Thank you. Scenario design consultation, where we had presented some options to policy people and sort of understood what are the key questions that they want to know, what pathogen should we look at, does that suit a dynamic modelling question, and so on. So we did that and then onboarded some teams. And basically how it works is throughout the year, teams work independently. They come up with their own model, their own assumptions, and calibrate to data. And we come together at certain points to discuss how our models differ or how outputs might align and what the reasons for that might be. Towards the end of the year, we then come together again and attempt to align our results. There's always a bit of back and forth there as well, as we still iron out different assumptions. But that process is a really important part of this. And then we pull all of this together in a synthesis and report, which is something that we're currently working on and disseminating. I should say this, in the interests of collaboration and involvement, there's likely opportunities in the future to be involved in that in some way. So I don't have much time, actually. I'll just touch on this very quickly. So just to highlight a couple of key programs of work, we're particularly interested in RSV transmission and immunity. So thinking about immunity for RSV, how that interacts with vaccination, understanding correlates of protection, and also cost effectiveness of vaccines. We've also had a program of work around COVID-19 epidemiology and vaccine impact, both around pandemic response, but also around our future pandemic planning, which is something that Tiffany and our team is working on, thinking about ongoing benefit of vaccination and how that's impacted by socioeconomic strata. And finally, I just wanted to mention, again, thinking about opportunities for connection in the future, we have this funding scheme for, which is called the Global Research and Impact Program here at UNSW. That gives some small grants that prioritise international collaborations with focus on EMCRs. So it could facilitate sort of a 2-month visit to Sydney, for example, to work on a project of common interest. So I thought I'd mention that in case that's something that comes up in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Alexandra.
Stop
And
sharing.
over to you, Mike.
Okay, thanks. I'll just work out where the share screen button is. Can people see that? Great, thank you. Yeah, thanks very much for the organisers and the opportunity to speak today. My name is Michael Plank. I'm at the University of Canterbury in Christchurch, which is in the South Island of New Zealand. I have to apologise slightly for this first slide, but I couldn't resist. It's a sort of a national running joke in New Zealand that we're always being left off maps. And I don't know, maybe in the current state of the world, that's possibly not a bad thing. But if you're wondering where New Zealand is, it's shown over on the corner there. And here on this slide, just a few, I guess, things that crop to mind when I think about sort of points of difference or things that particularly impact IDD research in Aotearoa, New Zealand. We have quite significant Indigenous Maori and Pacific populations, and those populations have higher burden from endemic and pandemic diseases. And I've pulled out rheumatic fever as an example there. We have, shockingly, I think the highest rate of rheumatic fever in the OECD. Like many places, we're grappling with falling childhood vaccination rates. Maybe unlike other places, we're quite geographically remote, as you can see from the map, which does, as we saw during the pandemic, sort of open the possibilities of travel restrictions and border controls as a pandemic response strategy. And so that feeds into some of the thinking about pandemic planning. And agriculture and wildlife conservation are quite important issues for the country, and so animal diseases and One Health are quite important in aspects relating to IDD. So I've just got a few slides. I'm probably going to have to go through these quite quickly because we're sort of hard up against the clock. But I just want to give a little bit of a flavour of some of the areas of interest for my group here at the University of Canterbury. And I'll also touch on a couple of sort of research areas of other groups around the country as well. I can't cover everything, of course, in 10 minutes. So it's certainly not intended to be comprehensive, but just to give a little bit of a flavour of some of the research interests that are here. So in my group, we use hidden state models, and that links in with the ASIFA forecasting hub that Freya was talking about earlier. So using these hidden state models for forecasting respiratory disease, and that feeds into the weekly report that we produce for our New Zealand public health partners. We also use those models for things like estimating probability of elimination at the end of an outbreak, and also applied to modelling new data streams like wastewater surveillance data. We've got an interest in stratifying infectious disease models by ethnicity or other socioeconomic variables. I think this was one of the sort of shortcomings of some of the modelling work that we did during the pandemic. We had a lot of questions about differential impact by ethnicity in particular, and the models we were using weren't able to give very satisfactory answers to those questions. So we have a program of work at the moment to try and kind of separate those models out into different ethnicity groups using contact matrices and those sorts of approaches. We're also interested in scenario modeling. So during the pandemic, we spent a lot of time kind of estimating the impact of different interventions or relaxing public health measures. And now with more of a sort of forward-looking lens, looking at pandemic preparedness and future pandemic response, comparing different pandemic response strategies like elimination or suppression or mitigation. And also different strategies for vaccine rollouts in the event of a future pandemic. Another project I wanted to mention is on pertussis. modelling. So this is with some colleagues at the University of Auckland. So you can see some data here, and this shows some of the falling childhood vaccination rates in that left-hand graph. And then on the right-hand graph, you've got monthly pertussis notifications. And so you can see this epidemic cycle where there's a big epidemic every 4 or 5 years, interrupted during the pandemic, but has come back with a resurgence in recent times. And so the aim of this project is to try and fit a model to some of this data and then use that model to try and investigate different vaccination scenarios. And then, yeah, just to mention the work of some other groups that I'm aware of. So New Zealand has very good linked microdata. So this is something called the Integrated Data Infrastructure, which takes census and admin data from various government departments, and it's all linked. So we've got really good data linkage in this integrated data infrastructure. So there's a couple of groups. There's a group interested in network models, and they built a large network-based model for COVID-19 during the pandemic, and another group interested in agent-based modeling, both using that same microdata. As I mentioned earlier, animal disease and One Health is an important area in New Zealand. So there's a group at the Bioeconomy Science Institute who are interested in primarily diseases that have an impact on native wildlife, but also that relate to agriculture as well. And then there's a group at Massey University led by Dave Heyman, and they have interests in disease ecology and zoonotic diseases, as well as work in molecular epidemiology, food and waterborne pathogens as well. And then New Zealand has quite strong pathogen genomics capabilities, and so there are quite a number of people working in this area, and this was used to great effect during the pandemic, was sort of used in real time to inform decisions about outbreaks and responding to outbreaks with relatively small numbers of cases, and the ability to link those cases with genomic data. But it's also used in other application areas quite broadly. So things like avian influenza surveillance, understanding meningococcal carriage, real-time detection and management of nosocomial outbreaks, and antimicrobial resistance as well, for example. And then the last thing I just want to mention is, so this is a research platform. It's called TANIFA, the Infectious Diseases Research Platform. So this research platform has recently finished its first sort of phase of funding, which started in 2022, but it's recently been refunded for another 7.5 years. And so this is quite a broad platform. It covers all of infectious diseases, so it's not restricted to IDD or to modelling. But I think there are some real opportunities there to sort of embed modelling a little bit more in ID research more broadly than maybe it is at present. And this platform has a strong focus on community and policy engagement, and on research into the impacts of infectious diseases on disproportionately affected populations, including Māori and Pacific populations. So yeah, last slide is to just say thank you very much to the organisers for the invitation today, and thank you very much as well to the people who are behind the scenes driving GSIDD. I think it's a fantastic initiative, and I'm really looking forward to seeing it develop, and being part of that international community is great. So there's some acknowledgements to some funding agencies and public health partners on this slide here, and thank you very much for listening.
Thanks, Mike. Over to you, Melissa.
Thank you all. Can you see my screen? I'll just get it in presentation mode, hopefully.
Yep.
Okay, thanks everyone, and thank you also for the invite. It's really a pleasure to join the first Connect series, the Oceania one as well. I think it's really nice that Australia came first on that for once. Really great, and really nice to hear about all the networks. Just a little bit about myself. I'm Melissa Penny. I'm newly back to Australia. I originally studied in Australia, but I spent 18 years in Switzerland. So I say newly, but it's been 2 years now, but I just feel like it took that while to establish the team and move all my research from Switzerland. So I'm going to give you a little bit of a flavour of what's happening in Perth and our networks that are rather quite global at this point because of the move internationally. So I'd also just like to acknowledge the elders of the lands that I'm on, which are the Noongar Whadjuk people, and also pay my respects to the elders and past, present, and emerging. In Perth, so we're located on the west coast of Australia, as Freya pointed out. We have at the Kids Research Institute in Australia, we have a large contingency of infectious disease dynamics and modelers. We have three major groups. There's the group of Pete Gathing, which most people may know him as the Malaria Atlas Project. That's geospatial modeling, providing global burden of disease estimates for malaria and a lot of analytics in that respect. But they also work on some Western Australian health programs as well. Then there's Nick Golding, which many of the teams in Melbourne know very well because he was previously in Melbourne and he's got teams both team members in Perth and in Melbourne. So he's the infectious disease ecology and modelling team at the Kids, but he's also known for his work in malaria on Vector Atlas. And then there's my team that has since joined in the last 2 years. We're known as the Global Disease Modelling Team, but we're known for our individual-based modelling of malaria. And then I'll talk through a bit about what we're doing. Nick does a lot of modelling on viruses, forecasting COVID's, collaborated with many of you on the COVID work, but he also does a lot of geospatial modelling and statistics on the vector side for malaria. And with this critical mass, probably the biggest malaria modelling expertise in the world, we are working on some novel approaches to combine the expertise across these three groups, just really combining individual-based models and geospatial modelling, both novel approaches to doing that, but also the application of that to inform policy decisions and burden of disease estimates. So my team, Global Disease Modelling Team, there's a recent picture of us and a list of all my colleagues. You'll notice some names there. We work mainly on malaria and strep at the moment, but previously Andrew Shattuck and myself led a lot of the COVID modelling responses in Switzerland, so working during that pandemic and also providing evidence to the national bodies on decisions of the rollout of the vaccines. I've asterisked a few names here because two are still based in Switzerland, and Andrew is still an honorary in my team, but just recently joined the Gates Foundation, for those of you who may know him. So he's moved to the UK. We're known really for our work in product development space. So the application of our IDD is really in the R&D, clinical trials, and thinking about novel tools for both burden reduction and to accelerate elimination. And they're primarily known for that for malaria. So I would say our core expertise and specialties that we've brought to Perth is really IBM methods development. So we develop individual-based models or agent-based models of disease dynamics. But our application really, and the niche of our application is in the product development side. So we work a lot with clinical trial partners, R&D partners who've still got products in preclinical stage, trying to think about their development to really meet the policy needs of tools that often don't have a profit margin attached to them. So it's really in the global health space. So this means we do span from innovation through to impact. And I've just put a few buckets here. The model development and methods innovation I'll talk about just a little bit, but we are known for our open source models on several diseases, and particularly IBMs. But we use them to understand disease dynamics and more of the theoretical type questions, asking questions that we don't have data on, and that includes on immunity dynamics, pathogenesis. But we also then do a lot of work of taking early clinical data or preclinical data and start thinking about what does a product need to look like. So this is the target product profile type modeling. And then throughout my career and many in my group, we do support a lot of decision making at the policy level, such as WHO, or with funding partners to start thinking about their investments in novel products. A couple of examples in our recent policy translation, just on malaria vaccines. if you're unaware, malaria vaccines were first trialed, I think the first phase 3 trial finished in 2015, but we didn't have a WHO policy recommendation until 2021. But we continue to accrue new evidence on these vaccines and to think about dose optimization and what's the observed impact of these vaccines outside the trial, so more on severe disease and mortality. So we continue to engage with those observed evidence in implementation trials to refine policy. And here's an example about the impact of vaccines and dose optimization on severe disease. New vaccines coming up for malaria include R21, which have also been recommended, but they require updated economic assessments based on phase 3 studies. And we've recently submitted that in ongoing collaborations with those clinical trial partners. We support Gavi, that's the Global Alliance for Vaccine and Immunization. They across their entire antigen portfolio, use modelling groups to understand the current impact, the past impact, and the future impact of their investments, to provide both advocacy to get the replenishments for their funds, but also to support funding applications from their countries that they support, Gavi-eligible countries. Moving forward, that's a very important use of modelling. There's a large network that I'll come through that actually supports Gavi on this. It's very important because the replenishments now with reduced funding for vaccines, they're now going to have antigen prioritization. And so these estimates of modelling become quite important to make sure countries make the best decisions about where they place their money from Gavi on each of their vaccines. And that potentially has an implication for malaria going forward because it's in the discretionary antigen bucket, not prioritised. The Gates Foundation, we also support by doing a lot of R&D modelling on their entire malaria novel tool portfolio. So this is vector control vaccines, immunotherapies, gene drive, and so on. And we do a lot of work with them to support their planning on what might happen over the next 20 years with their R&D investments to really calculate their return on investment. Mm-hmm. So open source is one of our key mantras. So we do develop individual-based models, but I was previously at the Swiss Tropical and Public Health Institute, so I continue to develop a IBM model with them. It's open source, you can check that out. As Alexandra mentioned, these types of models, these multi-scale models, we're really linking a lot of the within-host dynamics, including immunity acquisition and delays, and what happens if we delay that acquisition or we have vaccine-induced immunity, how that affects the entire disease process at the population level. And for malaria, that also includes the interaction with the mosquitoes. And these types of models allow us, because of this within-host component, allow us to also have very specific details about new products, which allow us to then explore product characteristics of new interventions. So we can include very early clinical data quite easily. And so that's the type of work we do. Moving forward, though, we're now struggling, or at least trying to be very supportive of the new vaccines in malaria, which are multi-stage vaccines. So this has quite some difficulty because you've got to think about these different, for example, a vaccine, if you have two antigens that have been combined, but you don't have much evidence of it, you've got to start thinking about the synergism of those different targets and what that means at the population level, both for averting childhood malaria mortality, but what does it do to reaching elimination? Like, what do we need from these products to support accelerating elimination? And so while a lot of work we do is using our model, we have information from clinical trials and we make public health impact estimates of those vaccines. What we also do is flip this around and think about what are we trying to achieve, whether it's elimination or reduce more malaria mortality in children. Once we have a goal, we can use analyses. We're just using optimization algorithms with surrogate models to understand the product characteristics that would help us achieve those goals, particularly in multi-stage candidates moving forward. So
Melissa,
I'm just
that's a 30-second warning. Yeah.
Yep, no problem. I'm just going to then say we've got some projects that you might be would like to know of. So we're hiring for some of these team projects. We have a big grant from the Gates Foundation to work on both model development and novel candidates, but these include monoclonal antibodies, for example, and long-acting injectables. One thing to point out is we have funding also for model development, and we have some generative AI tools we're developing to support our open source and community. We also have our our portfolio management projects. I did want to touch on generative AI, but we can maybe discuss this in another part about networks and collaborations. We are trying to provide tools that support our open malaria users, because we have a lot of users who aren't fully trained in IBM modeling, but they're using the models, and we're trying to bring our users closer to the model itself with very constrained LLM use. We also have projects on vaccines. We've just got a new project with Coefficient Giving, particularly to support new vaccines for a whole range of product developers, not just, for example, the Gates Foundation. Here we're focused both on elimination, but really, really focused on saving lives. And we also are working on Strep A vaccines funded by the NHMRC. I already mentioned Gavi work, but that's part of the Vaccine Impact Modeling Consortium and WHO. I'm just going to touch on networks as my final slide. We are part of the Vaccine Impact Modeling Consortium, so that's a global one. Many of you may know other networks if you're interested in malaria, the Applied Malaria Modeling Network. There's also a new organization called AHADI, the Applied Health Analytics for Decision and Innovation in Africa. So that's another network where analytics and modeling is being used. And we are really known for our R&D networks, so bringing modeling into our clinical trials and our R&D partnerships. So to that, I'm going to end on one little thing for you to remember if you're really interested in malaria vaccines. In the next weeks, we're launching a new malaria vaccine alliance. This is a global alliance that will be myself and Simon Draper from Oxford. This is really an R&D network. And I would like to point out we have technical working groups on modeling. So we're bringing the modeling to the R&D and the R&D to the modeling through this organization. So if you're interested, let me know. I'll add you to our mailing list, because we're really setting up, and it's on the back of 2 years of stakeholder engagement that we've run. So we have an organization who can support us to launch. So slightly different network outside of IDD, but please get involved if you're interested. And thank you very much.
Thanks, Melissa. As predicted, we were all so enthusiastic about the work that we're doing that there isn't time for questions. Hat, if I can take 1 minute, and then I'll give back to you for the final minute, if that works. We're going to have just one question, if you have your phones ready again, because this one links very nicely to Melissa's last slide. Are there networks, initiatives, collaborative opportunities, and IDD in Oceania that weren't mentioned in today's presentation? So if you can think of some more initiatives, post them now. I'll give you 15 seconds. Yep, Spark, that's a big network that is led out of Melbourne as well. Spark in all caps. Yeah. Yep, it's good.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mentioned Nancy.
Yep, Alexandra did mention Antium. Wonder if that's Emma McBride's journal club.
Yeah.
Yep. Great. And we will end there for this component. Despite I can still see things coming through. Maybe I'll wait a couple more seconds. Okay, back to you, Hat, to finish us off right on the hour.
Yeah, that was so professional and actually timing it. So thank you, all of you, for all the preparation. And I hope everyone is really as intrigued as I am, actually still kind of digesting so much going on there, right, that we don't know of. Yeah, so for attendees today, I really, again, stress this thank you, right, for joining us on your busy day today. And in the spirit of inclusivity, right, we will be sharing the recording file by website after, trimming here's and there's, and hopefully build in some contractions into the recordings as well to not make it too dry. But also, so please, tune in to that link and help us spread this word. so that, we can enhance the coverage and really, build this community to be very, very inclusive in the coming months, right? So, yeah, we'll be continuing to explore this sort of going around the world, what exists for IDD. And the next session of IDD Connect Series will be coming up very soon, I think in a month. So stay tuned to the mailing list and look forward to seeing you there. All right, thank you.
Thanks.
Thank
So
you.
Bye.